On today's episode, we're going to talk about embalming.
Dun dun dun.
What we do, why it's there.
History, the clinical side of it. We're going to delve deep into embalming and also the processes that are revolved around embalming, cosmetizing, casketing, restorative art. We'll kind of talk about all of that on today's episode. Ba-ba-ba-ba-ba-ba.
Let's talk about death, baby. Let's talk about grief and mourning. Is it argumental or existential? What's it mean to me? Let's talk about death.
Hi, I'm Benny Cabal, and I'm a funeral professional.
And I'm Nicholas Cabal, psychologist.
Hey, Nick, let's talk about death.
Let's do it.
Dr. Nick, today we're going to talk about embalming.
Woo! Let's do it.
That's
Let's
a
talk
wow.
about some
Can you not
embalming.
clip the microphone every time you do that, please?
Well,
Yeah.
you had to wake everybody up.
We got to start with the history, right? We got to go back. So let's start with the original embalming, which if you really want to go textbook, right, it would be the Egyptians, right, with mummification. And how they did that, they meticulously would take out the organs. They put them in what they would call canopic jars. They would have special oils and wrappings, and because of the temperature and where they were, they would literally mummify the bodies, and that's why we still have mummies to this day. And if you think about, back then, that's an incredible feat, really.
Well, and then also we talk about the cultural behind that is the Egyptians were really consumed and interested in what happened after life. So a lot of their culture was based around death.
And Anubis.
Yep. And so their funerals were really elaborate.
Yeah, didn't they bury the cats with them and
Well,
all their
especially like pharaohs. I mean,
possessions?
we could talk about the pyramids, right? That was part of that, But it was their wealth. They would have like week long things for these people. There were certain jobs put out by other people to be in charge. So it was like the original funeral directors too, because there was like priests that were involved in, making sure everybody knew that this person died and when this was going to go on, and kind of like the newspaper,
Read all about it.
Yeah. All their society was based around the idea of what happens after death.
There was a
And,
nice Facebook event passed out through the.
It was
the
interesting because
Egyptians.
their culture was like, we live to die,
That's it.
and
How important is that?
we went to the Egyptians, and then we moved forward. We could talk about all the Germanian. We could talk about all that stuff, but let's focus on the United States.
Then we go. So then the Civil War happens, right? And the wealthier families wanted a way to bring back their boys, the sons. So Thomas Holmes started what we would call the modern day embalming. And I think if I'm mistaken, right, and please, I'm sure I'm going to get one or two things messed up here, so I apologize to all the historians when it comes to funeral profession. But I'm pretty sure he used arsenic, was like the first main, other than formaldehyde. It was very caustic, but the idea was to keep the soldier so they could bring the soldier back home.
Yeah, so there was a lot of army people that were dying, on the field, in the field of battle, or they were dying in the barracks, and they were brought back by train. And the problem was that these trains would take weeks, maybe a week to 2 weeks, for these bodies to make it back to their home. So the problem was obviously decomp. So we didn't want to send our soldiers who were fighting this big battle home, and their family would be traumatized by the smell, by the looks of decomp. So we had to figure out a way to send these people back that their families could not only say, yep, this is Jim or this is John, but they could properly bury them, which I think is awesome. It was just an awesome feat for them.
Well, and to talk about the trains too, when Abraham Lincoln died, he was basically like put on a train and he would go around. They like sent him around so people could see him, while he was going through. So like think that's just an incredible thing. Maybe when I die, Nick, you can embalm me and put me on a train.
You want to be on a train?
Maybe I don't know. Well, what's the like the Florida ones? They're not trains. They're what's the monorail? Put me on a
Just in Florida?
put me on a
In
clear
Disney
monorail.
World? That's the only monorail I know about.
Why not?
You just want to be taken around Disney World multiple times?
Happiest place on earth, big guy.
Where do you end at? Epcot?
Oh, you end at the Haunted Mansion for sure.
So
For
Magic.
obvious
So
reasons.
Magic Kingdom.
You start at the Magic Kingdom. You end at
Okay.
the Magic Kingdom.
All right. Fair enough.
When you wish upon a star. Okay, so we're going to talk about embalming a little bit. So that's a little bit of the history. The modern day embalming is where we literally take embalming fluid, which is either formaldehyde or glutaraldehyde, different carbon chain, and we introduce that to the body while...
Ben, for the viewers out there, what is the difference between formaldehyde and formaldehyde?
Glutaraldehyde.
Glutaraldehyde.
It's a difference of a carbon chain. And that we can get more into that, but that's like the chemistry makeup of it.
It's just a different chemical.
It's a different chemical, and for instance,
Do you notice a difference in that between them?
Yes, yeah. Glutaraldehyde seems to take a little bit longer to work, but it works. It seems to work longer, if that makes sense. So it
lasts longer, but it takes longer to work.
It's not as harsh as formaldehyde is. Formaldehyde is kind of like the extra dose, right? Like we need to get this done, whereas like glutaraldehyde is like, we got some time, we want to make sure this is, that's not the best way to, but honestly, every embalmer is just like every other doctor, right? They have their own way, they have their own method,
Mm-hmm.
they use their own, there's tons of chemicals, there's different companies,
Tools.
they're called instruments that you use, and it is literally, that's why we're trained. We medically are trained to know basically a little bit of pre-med, so we know where all the arteries are, where the anatomy and phys, how it all works, why we're doing what we're doing. And so that's basically, we learn this in that's basically half of what we learn in
So
school.
if you could summarize it into a quick just a quick educational note, what actually are you doing in embalming?
So embalming, we are opening up two different vessels, an artery and a vein, and we're introducing the embalming fluid or whatever we're using into the artery, and then we're releasing the blood and the toxins through the vein.
So we're replacing, basically what we're doing is we're replacing the blood with chemicals.
In a very roundabout, yeah. I mean, you're not obviously going to get rid of all the blood, but yes, that's the idea.
Okay.
That's the idea, and it goes through, obviously, your circulatory system works very well, and it goes through all the capillaries and the veins and all of that. And if you have a good embalming, you get a good disbursement of the.
That's a good question. How do you know that you got a good disbursement?
There's a lot of different ways embalmers have to know. Feel. You can literally feel the body firm. B, color.
So you're looking for a firm. That's a good.
You're looking for a firm. You're looking for color. You're looking for distribution. There's certain things you'll see the actual veins rise when you're introducing the embalming fluid in. Like I said, color. Color is a huge thing. There's a time thing too here to this too. It's not just. You introduce it, bam, that's it. This is something embalmers have to keep an eye on the whole time, not only when they're embalming, but keep an eye on it after the fact to make sure that they really did get a good distribution. Sometimes.
So can you give the viewers an average time we're talking about here?
I would say a normal average embalming takes anywhere from an hour and a half to 2 hours. Sometimes that could be more. Depending on different circumstances, how long has the individual been deceased before you get to them? B, was there trauma? Was this an accident? Was there an autopsy done? There's different ways to embalm in certain things, especially when it comes to trauma an autopsy is, if you think about it clinically, is a trauma to the body. So you have to, we are trained to go into different veins and arteries and where certain places would be best if you have clots, or if you have a circulatory shutdown on one side of the body compared to another, or you may not be getting the embalming process correctly to one leg or one arm. There's ways that we can go around there. The main reason that we embalm, here's something interesting, Nick. The main reason we embalm is protection. It's to protect the living from the dead. We as clinicians, professionals as embalmers, we take an oath to protect the living. So one of the main reasons why we embalm is because when we die, we can still carry disease, right? COVID is a perfect example right now. We're all in this COVID world. COVID can be passed airborne from a deceased. So our job as clinicians is to make sure that part of the embalming process is to kill the COVID virus.
But it's also done to protect you guys too.
Absolutely, to protect us while we do what we do, and to be able to have so the family has an opportunity to see their loved one, if they so inclined to do so.
Once you completely embalm a body, can you actually get the virus or anything like that?
Most bloodborne pathogens or viruses are killed through the embalming process. So no. If the embalming process,
you said most. What is there? Some that can?
There's some pathogens that have nothing to do with bloodborne or airborne, but they don't necessarily know how they're transmitted.
Okay.
So the ones that we know of, yes, are killed with the embalming process.
Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. So that's the main reason we do it. Obviously, there's the other one of we want to make sure that we can keep the body. Preservation. Obviously, that's another.
Well, yeah,
main
especially
reason
with families. Back in the day, everybody lived in the same area. They were born there. They died there. Nowadays, everybody's everywhere, right?
Well, that's the case. You always have one son that's in the military. You have one daughter that's working out of California. She's in the marketing world. She's got a cat.
Or that daughter that's in the military.
Or the daughter that's in the military, and she can't tell you where she's at any point in time, but she needs to get back home. Or you just got the wandering son. He doesn't want to be in one place at one time.
He's a nomad.
He does what he does. So yeah, you always have somebody that you need to fly home. So time is, it's not like the old days where it was within 2 to 3 days you were having everything done. This could be a week, 2 weeks.
So let's average it for the viewers. For you guys, what is like the normal? How long does it literally take from the time that you receive the death call to the time that you're burying or you're cremating, or give us a rough draft here.
Well, there's two differences. If we're talking about a traditional funeral, pick up, embalm, meet the family, visitation, funeral, burial, let's say that, right? That's usually, I'd say, an average of 5 days, 5 to 7 days. If you're talking a direct cremation or a direct burial, pick up, you could be going to the crematory. Now with cremation, what's interesting and people don't know much about, a lot of the timing doesn't have anything to do with the funeral home. It has to do with the doctor. The doctor has to sign off, and then also the medical examiner of every county has to sign off on every cremation. So, for instance, if
wait a minute, are you saying that they have to sign off before the cremation can occur?
Correct. So, if we're talking, Nick, Thursday, right? Because as we know, the Grim Reaper doesn't always come on Monday.
So you're saying the death occurs on Thursday.
Let's say the death occurs on Thursday. You don't get that doc to sign on Friday. You might be waiting till Monday before that doctor gets back in to sign.
So we basically, as the funeral director, you really can't do much until that's signed.
Correct. So a lot.
So what happens if the doctor is on vacation?
Then that's a good question. For most doctors, they should have somebody on call to take care of anybody that they have. That's not always the case, and sometimes doctors do go on, and some of it's not their fault. Some of them, they have a family emergency, right, and they take off. They don't have anybody planned.
Or maybe they had a death themselves.
Could be. But either way, sometimes that does cause times to glip. So a direct cremation usually probably because the cremation itself, the process is about 6 to 8 hours, right? So that's a day if you think about it. So usually direct cremation could be 3 to 4 days average, because by the time you get all the signatures, by the time you you get the individual to the crematory does the cremation, and then you pick up the body, it could be 4 to 5 days.
That's a great question. I know that this episode's not about cremation, but from your knowledge, how long does a cremation actually take? A legit cremation?
It's what I just said. Average about 5 day turnaround, 5 to 7 day.
No. I'm saying like the actual process of cremation. How long does that take?
I think it's 4 to 6 hours, something like that.
So let's get back to embalming. Sorry, apologize. So to me, being born and raised around a funeral home, there's more to embalming than actually just the procedure of embalming.
Right.
What would you, like when we talk about cosmetology and preparing the body and making, embalming to me, in my experience, is the whole process of getting the body ready.
So you're taking into consideration restoration work, and you're taking into consideration the actual casketing work, right?
Yeah, so speak to that.
So what I wanted to first tell what embalming is, what the actual definition is, and what the actual process is. But Dr. Nick, you're absolutely right. After you're done with the embalming, usually you wait. You want to have some time for the body, to take in the fluids to be able. You're also going to want to make sure their hair looks right. Right? Yeah. So if you need a cosmetologist to come in, you have a cosmetologist come in. If it's a gentleman's hair, you want to make sure their hair is parted to the right way, et cetera, et cetera. If they never had a beard and they were always clean-shaven and the family wants them clean-shaven, that's what you're doing. You're cleaning fingernails. You're trimming fingernails if you need to. You're making sure... All of us gentlemen, when we get to a certain age, we start growing hair on our ears for some reason and out of our nose. If it gets a little wild,
why is it just the gentlemen?
Well, because ladies just don't have that problem. They're just
it just doesn't happen, right? This is like women don't fart.
No,
right?
Absolutely. But I can speak for a gentleman because I am a gentleman. But that's what they say.
Or the nostril hair.
Yeah, it's just
wild. Weird places.
It's just wild. So you got to make sure you take care of that. You want to make sure that when the family brings the clothes that they're ironed and they look nice and there's no noticeable
Wait a minute,
stains.
Are you saying they don't pre-iron before they come in?
No, sometimes they'll literally buy you a new shirt, and if any person has ever pulled apart the new, it's annoying. You got like 18 pins you got to take out. The shirt is looks like a bunch of squares.
I got to ask this question. Do you iron or do you steam? Are you steamer or an iron?
No, we're an iron. We got the old school iron. You got to go right back to the beginning. But you also got ties, right? So sometimes they don't iron their ties. So their ties have been, or there's a lot of men out there that they don't know how to tie their ties. So they leave it knotted.
Yep, and then it's fold.
It ruins
the wrinkle.
Tie. It ruins
I know what you're talking about.
Note to self, anybody out there, please do not keep your ties tight. It doesn't take that long to learn how to tie a tie. It really doesn't. I think it's something every person should learn. Women or men.
Wow,
included.
That's a little judgmental.
I think it's a part of life. You
got to know how to tie a tie. Just like you got to tie your shoes.
Tie your shoes, tie your tie. Maybe there's a cool maybe we can make our own
loop swoop.
We can make our own TikTok where we do like a dance for the tie.
How to teach people how to tie tie?
Are you a single Windsor or are you a double Windsor?
Double Windsors do look good.
Double Windsors are pretty cool because if you pull it comes out.
Do you double Windsor or single Windsor?
Single Windsor through and through.
Why?
I don't know. Just that's how I've always been taught.
What if that guy was a double Windsor?
I'd have to learn. I honestly, this is a true story.
Has anybody ever said that to you?
I've never had to tie a bow tie, and I know it's going to come someday. I know somebody's going to give me a natural bow tie, and I don't know how to do it. So that's something.
A natural bow tie.
A natural bow tie.
Like towards the face.
Well,
you mean a clip-on?
There's some clip-ons. There's some zip-ons. Zip-ons and clip-ons.
There's a zip-on?
Okay, but going... Okay.
Wait a minute. I don't even know about a zip-on.
So
what's
there's
a
ties
zip-on?
that have a zip.
There's a zip in the
I'll
back?
show you some zip-ons. All
wow.
right. Anyways, beside the point. Let's go back to embalming. So when the embalming process, you're talking about restorative. You're talking about casketing. That is part of
makeup, hair.
Yeah, makeup, hair. I think that you do got to take into that because a true embalmer or a true trade embalmer or somebody who spends most of his time, because some of us in the funeral profession spend all of our time in the embalming room. casketing, clothing, all that, and we make sure we take a lot of honor to that, and that's something too, Dr. Nick, you said about embalming. There's also the humanistic side of it. You are dressing somebody. You are make-upping somebody. You are literally embalming somebody. You are
that's the beauty
dealing
about
with Robert. You're not dealing with.
That's the beauty about some cultures, right? Is that maybe correct me if I'm wrong, Benny, but isn't like some religions and stuff like they still have family come in and dress them?
Yeah, there's some traditional, and I don't know them all, and I apologize if I don't talk about each one because I don't have the time. But I'll just bring up the traditional Jewish family, right? They have like the Shevra Kaddish come in, and they have. They clothe the body. They have the person sit out. There's somebody who sits and wake while that's all being done. They
I was
have
thinking
the
about
7 days, where
like the military, right? If they die in service,
if they die in combat, they have a literal
like a standing guard.
It's not called an entourage, but it's one. They usually have 1 to 2 military
escorts
that literally bring the person to the funeral home. They'll stay at the funeral home, and they make sure that their fallen comrade gets the proper and honorable funeral.
Which, by the way, I have experienced too, and I'm not a funeral director, but being part of this funeral home, I have experienced, and what a beautiful thing.
It's incredible. It's incredible. And we talked about it in that movie with Kevin Bacon. Kevin Bacon's.
Yeah, what's that movie called?
Ooh. We anyways, check back
Last
our other
Chances
podcast.
or Second Chance?
Check back our other podcast on movies, right? Movies and Death? Is it Movies and Death? Yeah, I think so. But Media and Death. I don't know. One of those. You'll be a bit. Yep. So I think that basically gives a synopsis of embalming. Feel free, if you have any questions about embalming, please message us at letstalkaboutdeathpod@gmail.com, or if you want us to go more into one of specific areas, please let us know.
Taking Chance. That's what it was.
Taking Chance. But Dr. Nick, I think we have some Q&As. What do you think?
Let's do it.
Q&A, everyone loves that Q&A.
We got to get that Q&A.
All right, Dr. Nick, I'll throw this one at you, see what you can do with this.
All right.
Why do we
Give me a challenge.
Why do we embalm? Can you not interrupt me next time? Why do we embalm bodies? Why put all those harmful chemicals into our bodies when we die? Why not just let us naturally decompose and become part of the earth? Also, why are caskets so expensive? Why not bury us just straight into the ground so we can decompose faster?
Okay, so I'm going to answer this the best as I can as not a funeral director, but I did a lot of study on funeral directors. I did my dissertation on what is the experience of being a funeral director, and I'm born and raised around funeral directors. So here's my answer. Why do we put chemicals in the body, and why can't we just naturally just put you in the ground and let you decompose? Here's the problem, right? So nowadays, we always have to be worried about your body decomposing and how that's going to affect waterways, because we still live in a community where a lot of people still get their water from wells, which means that all this running underground water does collect somewhere, right? So the problem is this. Realize today, if we go back in time, most people didn't have pacemakers. Most people didn't have defibrillators in them, didn't have all these natural or unnatural chemicals in their bodies from medications, heart medications, all this stuff, right? So here's the problem. Actually, it was just interesting enough. I was just reading something that they took a sample of the Great Lakes, and they found that, I forget the percentage, and I hate saying, I wish I knew the percentage off the top of my head, but there is a percentage of the Great Lakes that we're drinking, or that we could be drinking if we're in the Great Lakes drinking it, that has heart medication in it. It's a very low, but it's there. So here's the question. The problem is if we put everybody just in the ground, like your backyard, your neighbor's backyard, right? And let's say you have a well that you're sharing, the neighbor who buried their person in the backyard, and you're sharing a well. You are literally drinking some of their medication. Is that not scary?
That's very scary. It's very scary. Well, I think this question is specifically why not green burial, right? That's the idea. Why not just literally put people in the ground, which is called green burial, and it is something to look into if you are the person that asked this question out there. My thing to you is, and Dr. Nick and I have explained this, some people need the visitation, funeral, burial experience. Other people don't. So my thing to you is, why do we put chemicals in the body? We do it specifically so we can safely give families and honorably give families a chance to properly have a visitation, or funeral and burial, if they especially want over a amount of time, which is going to cause problems if we do not embalm. So that I think slowly kind of answers your question. Why are caskets so expensive? Honestly, the caskets, they're still, the wood ones are mostly handmade. My question to you is, if you had your own like little wood shop, and you made your own casket and sold it, what would you sell that? What price would you put on making a handmade casket?
Not to mention right now, in at least where Ben and I are,
wood is expensive.
Lumber is super expensive right now. Super expensive. But again, it's just like, why do people spend a lot of money on cars? Are you going to spend more money on, let's say, a Mercedes than you are a Toyota? One is handmade, one is not, right? So it's a great question, but there is some caskets that are still handmade, and that's important to some people.
And absolutely. And the other thing about why not just put us in the ground, make sure if this was a hypothetical, thank you, hypothetical question, like if you're putting just bodies in the ground, make sure you know how far to put them in the ground, because if you're just burying them without properly knowing how far to go, you can have animals digging them up. You could have Bernie be dragged into your yard, and you may not want that.
Cats bring
so yeah,
cats bring mice to be like, look what I did.
So and Dr. Nick, you actually did it right. We don't have enough knowledge on what these cancer medications, or how much, because they're radioactive, some of these. So if we're putting them in the ground, that eventually is going to somehow show up.
Ben, between you and I always think of Aaron Brockovich, the movie. If you ever watch that movie, it's this idea of this water company that was doing chemical stuff, and it was draining into people's like pools and stuff like that, because they were pulling from the same water source. Yeah. That's a scary situation, and it could cause a lot of other issues. But let's get to the next question, Ben. Best memorial website. Question about using online memorial websites. Are there differences between them? Is there anything you like/dislike about them? Are there some that are better for sharing with the family and friends than others? That's the questions.
Best memorial websites. I'm guessing this would be like the website specifically that just grab obituaries, and they put them so it's one place. Like I'm just speaking of one. I'm not saying it's good, bad, indifferent, but like Legacy, they like grab obituaries, so you can just type in the obituary and it'll send you to the paper that it was, or to the funeral home or whatnot.
How did they get that?
There's websites out there that specifically just grab, and that's their thing, is to be able to, like, a one stop. You could find any obituary, when it was and how it was. I don't think there's a best or anything like that. But I guess that would be the question I have, is what kind of memorial website are you talking about? Are you trying to see a website that helps you, like, answer questions about, like, certain things? Because I can speak, like, most associations, like, for Michigan Funeral Directors have one association, as well as the National Funeral Directors Association have websites.
Let me ask you. Let me backtrack. The one that you know of, can you leave like a condolence for that memorial?
I think you can. Yeah. So you can go on these memorial websites and leave a condolence on them, or they might have you. I'm not too familiar if they might send you to the website of the funeral home, to leave a online condolence.
Or like maybe the Monroe Evening News. Or
Correct.
something
I think it links you to the original post. So I think from there you can. So yes, one way or another, yes. But I don't know if you can actually leave an online condolence on that and then it gets sent to the family. So I'm not sure on that. I don't think so. I think those websites specifically are just to find the obituary.
Now the one that you're talking about, the one that you know of, is that like nationwide? Is that like worldwide? I mean, how?
I'm not sure how far. I don't know if it's. I'm sure it's not global. I'm sure it's somewhere in the States, but it could be region-wise. It could be. I would assume it's statewide.
So I just thinking of like a random, like you're growing older and you think of that random, like, oh, I went to high school with Jimmy Pete, right? And then you look online and you're like, Jimmy Pete. Right? And it's like, oh, legacy.com, like Jimmy Pete, and he died, blah, 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 blah. I guess that would be kind of cool, right?
Yeah,
you could always just kind of look
really
up
cool.
past high school people.
I don't know if they keep a database of ones before. So if before the website existed, I don't think you could find Jimmy Pete back in
You couldn't find the
1962.
first Jimmy Pete.
Yeah. You'd have to find Jimmy Pete Jr.
Oh, the
Or
third.
Jimmy Pete the third. They just skipped Junior. They just went right to the third.
Sorry, any Jimmy Pete.
But I think the best memorial websites to me would be the ones that have the most information. So I would say go to the like I said, your state association website or to the National Funeral Directors Association website, and they actually have documentation on how to help you with things or groups to find or
where to look.
Yeah, I think those are better. Whereas the one I'm talking about, and yet again, I'm not saying any bad, is just specifically to find an obituary, I think. So I think
you answered that one pretty good.
I think so, Dr. Nick. Well, if you have any questions or thoughts on embalming or green burials or memorial websites, don't forget to write us an email. Or if you have any questions, like we love answering your questions, please you can email us at letstalkaboutdeathpod@gmail.com. Also, don't forget to subscribe, share with us, like us. If you have Apple and you're listening to us on
Review
Apple,
us. Give us that 5-star,
give us a review.
baby.
5 stars. 7 stars if you can give it. And talk to your friends about us. Share us. Like put this out. Like the more that you can do, the better we can do. So thank you for listening, and I think that wraps her right up.
Because if you ain't talking about death,
You ain't living.